It's the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast. It's a transfer show, and we are live.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.
Hello and welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast, brought to you by 90 Min. As ever, I'm your host, Harry Symeou, and on this edition, we're going to be leading with Martin Odegaard's comments with regards to his future. Martin Odegaard has spoken out about where he'll be playing his football next season. We'll also be touching a little bit on the Emile Smith-Rowe story. Of course, reports of Aston Villa's interest just not going away at the moment, but we're also going to talk about the links to Manuel Locatelli, and I'm going to point you in the direction of some great insight into the Sassuolo man. Hope you're all well. Hope everybody's... I don't know if I'm looking forward to it, but I hope everybody's kind of, really enjoyed the football last night and kind of got to the point now where they're like, well, it's actually quite nice to have a break, because it is nice to have that sometimes. As much as I love the game and I could easily sit and watch football every single night without any issue, I think it is nice actually that we've got today, Thursday and Friday with no European Championship action. So we can kind of take stock, chill out a bit, unwind a bit, maybe spend some time with our other halves who are getting on our case for neglecting them during the Euros. I know I'm getting that. But yeah, fingers crossed we can get over these next couple of days, unwind, relax a bit, and sort of build up the excitement towards what is coming over the next few days. And there is plenty coming in terms of footballing action, but keeping it Arsenal related. We brought you a Euro show earlier today, so if you haven't checked that out already, go and find it. It's the last video on the feed, and it's the last podcast on the audio feed if you prefer to consume those bits of content that way. It's up to you. But let's get into it then. Let's talk about Martin Odegaard, because Martin Odegaard is a player that Arsenal clearly wanted to sign, right? There's no doubt about that. It was very clear. Mikel Arteta had spoken quite openly about the fact that he was a huge fan of Martin Odegaard. And from what we're led to believe from the reports that we've sort of been consuming over the last few months, Martin Odegaard was, however you want to put it, one of Arsenal's main priorities heading into the summer transfer window. However, those chances of signing Martin Odegaard have been dealt a blow after the player himself spoke to TV2, the Norwegian outlet, just yesterday. These are his comments. This is what he had to say. He says, "My status is that I'm a Madrid player and that I will return and start up there in a week and a half." So Real Madrid, of course, due to return to training in a week and a half. And seeing as they've got no players at the Euros for the first time ever, they're actually... Spanish players, I should say. They probably have a pretty full-on squad for that. But he revealed that Real Madrid have been clear that they would like him back. So then it will be time to go there when training starts up again. So he said, "I haven't talked to Ancelotti personally yet, but I have talked a lot with the club and had a close dialogue. So I feel I have a good overview for what is going on. Of course, it has always been my dream to play there. I've been in the club for over 6 years now, and that has always been the goal. I always want to play. I've said that all the time. Playing hard is important." So Martin Odegaard, look, you can't blame Martin Odegaard, right, for wanting to play for Real Madrid. And obviously, Real Madrid are in a position now where financially they're not able to go out and bring in 5 or 6 Galacticos, as they like to call them, like they would have done in years gone by. And they're having to get a little bit creative, and they're having to look at internal solutions, one of which is Martin Odegaard. Look, they'll look at his loan spell at Arsenal and say, he went out, he got regular football, he built up his fitness, he showed, I would say in flashes, that he can be a really influential player. I think the Spanish game will suit him even more. I think when he's afforded that little bit of extra space, that little bit of extra time on the ball, I think he'll probably feel a lot more comfortable. That's not to say he didn't cope with the physical demands of the Premier League, because I actually thought he got up to speed really, really quickly for someone who'd played such little football in the build-up to his loan move to Arsenal. But, you know, Real Madrid will look at this and say, well, he's gone out on loan to Arsenal. That loan has served its purpose. He's back now. He's a better player than he was when he left. And so, you know, we're gonna bring him into the side. From an Arsenal perspective, though, I think it's quite disappointing, because I know he didn't always hit top level. And I know there are a lot of Arsenal fans that were on the fence about it. And I know that a lot of Arsenal fans' opinion on whether it was the right move to sign Martin Odegaard was very dependent on how much it was going to take to prize him away from Real Madrid. You know, at one point we were talking about £30 million, a figure which I thought was probably realistic and probably quite fair. However, you know, it's increased. You know, according to the reports, Real Madrid want more than that, and therefore it makes the deal a little bit out of reach. You know, we know that Arsenal tried for Emi Buendia over the course of this summer so far, lost out on that one, or lost out's probably the wrong term, decided not to go all the way in terms of the price like Aston Villa did, who have ended up signing the player. So it shows that Arsenal are at least preparing for the eventuality that Martin Odegaard is unattainable this summer. You know, am I reading too much into Martin Odegaard's comments with regards to how viable a deal is? You know, is it a case of, well, because Martin Odegaard has said that he wants to play for Real Madrid and he's been told he will, that he himself is not open to a move? Well, he can't really go there and say that he's not happy to be there, and he can't really go there and say that he doesn't want to play and that he doesn't. So, you know, this is not, you know, for me, Martin Odegaard is not the issue, because I think that Martin Odegaard, and this is just based on feeling, based on reading between the lines, based on how he got on at Arsenal during his time here, I feel like Martin Odegaard would be happy to join Arsenal Football Club. But he's a Real Madrid player, and so the ball is in Real Madrid's court. And at this moment in time, it looks like a transfer is off of the table. Would I rule it out completely, though? Not yet. Not yet. There's still a little tiny part of me that feels that if you give Real Madrid what they want, if you place the right amount of money on the table, Real Madrid will consider. And that's looking at them as, you know, looking at them from a kind of wider lens, looking at them as a football club and the position that they're in at the moment. Yeah, so that's how I feel about this one. Would I have liked to see Ødegaard return? Yes, but I also acknowledge that if Real Madrid are asking a silly amount of money for a player who, in my opinion, has the potential, has the ability to go on and be a really good player for Arsenal Football Club, you know, but isn't maybe necessarily quite there yet. I don't know. I get it. Look, I get it. I get the hesitation. I really do. But the problem is that who are the alternatives? You know, where are the alternatives? As I said, I mentioned Buendia. Haven't really been linked with a great deal else in that kind of area. Not players that I'd kind of be keen on anyway. Let's go over to the live chat. Say a big good afternoon to those of you who are joining us live. Big hello to Zita, to Dave, to Junior Gunner, who says, yes, Harry, 23 years younger today. Am I? Or you're 23 years younger. Happy birthday. I just got that. Sorry. Happy birthday, mate. Happy birthday. Matt says, let's do this, Harry. Omar says, afternoon, Harry. Rory says, Harry, do you ever take a break? Huge respect for the consistent content. That's what my wife says. Do I ever take a break? No. The world of football is always moving and things are always happening, especially during the summer. A lot of people think that if you're kind of in this line of work, that you can get to the summer and you can take your foot off the gas. This year, it's even less so, because the turnaround time between the end of the season and the Premier League starting was short. And the Euro starting was shorter. And then, you know, then you're going to have that really hectic period during the transfer window between the end of the Euros and the start of the new Premier League season. So it is non-stop. But I enjoy it. You know, I can't complain. Yeah, there are days when I'm tired. There are days when I feel like I can't be bothered. But, you know, there are much worse jobs in the world. And I fully recognize that I'm very lucky to be able to do what I do. So I'm not going to sit here and complain about it. Not for a second. Adam says, I'm glad he's gone back. Talking about Martin Odegaard, we need better than his level at the moment. He'd be better at a club like City. So Adam not convinced. Sajal says, Odegaard's career has been saved. Charlie says, I froze my season ticket because we're a disgrace of a club. No Buendia because we wanted to chase Ødegaard, who was unrealistic and frankly not that good. Chronicles better be going for Grealish. They need to make up for 14 years of incompetence. I'm not sure that we went that, I'm not sure that I get where you're coming from with Buendia, right? I get it. A lot of Arsenal fans were keen to see Arsenal bring in Buendia. And then when that didn't happen, when it emerged that Aston Villa were leading the race, or Aston Villa had opted to, to trigger or to meet the price that Norwich City were asking for the player, a lot of Arsenal fans felt disappointed, felt let down. I think for me, what you've got to consider, though, is you've got to consider, a lot of factors about Buendia. You're talking about him coming up from the Championship, and yes, he had an extremely impressive record down in the second tier with Norwich City last season. That doesn't always translate into an equally impressive record, though, in the Premier League. It can do, and we've seen, examples of that. Look at Ollie Watkins, for example, somebody who's come up and kind of picked up where he left off and has done a really good job for Aston Villa. But then you look at somebody like Said Benrahma, who was probably held in higher esteem than any of those players I've just mentioned before he eventually come to the Premier League. And he's been a bit part player at West Ham. So there is an element of risk when you do a transfer like that. There's an element of risk in any transfer. I always say this. But, I would have preferred, personally, Martin Odegaard over Emi Buendia. If we end up with neither and no good enough alternative, then obviously at the end of the window, we can turn around as Arsenal fans, express our disappointment and frustration. I know a lot of people keep making the point that the Premier League season is not that far away and that pre-season training resumes early in July. But a lot of these players that are at the Championships are not going to be back straight away. There is still time. I know in an ideal world, you'd like to have all your new recruits in through the door, relaxed and settled by the time you get to the end of preseason, when you really start ramping things up. But it's just not always realistic. It's not always in Arsenal's hands alone when it comes to getting transfers over the line. And I think a lot of people need to remember that. I really, really do. Matt G says Odegaard has to say that. Same with Guendouzi. Until Guendouzi has been sold, he's going to return to preseason training in 2 weeks. Yeah, completely agree. Completely agree with that. It's just kind of ticking the boxes, isn't it, when they say things like that? And that's, yes, him saying what he said, or I'm talking about Odegaard here, will come as a bit of a blow to those Arsenal fans that really want to see him come in. But again, it's not gospel. Nothing ever is in football. Things change in football very, very quickly. And, I wouldn't be surprised if Real Madrid's stance on Martin Odegaard softens and changes as the transfer window goes on, depending on what other business they can get in. If they can, you never know, they might sell and raise funds, in which case they'll be looking to bring someone else. There's so many things that can happen in football and in a transfer window that you can never say never. But obviously it does come as a blow to those who want to see him come in. Sam says we're wasting our time if we're still going after Ødegaard. Time to move on. Gooner Vettels is a Norwegian Gooner and says, I'm Norwegian, Harry, and was watching the whole program Ødegaard was in. He's clearly motivated by Madrid, but he doesn't rule out anything because it's all about game time. So nothing is decided yet. So interesting to get a different kind of viewpoint on that interview. Aditya says, question, I was wondering if we get players of English core, we might get more 50-50 decisions, pens, VAR, etc. in our favour, which will result in us finishing 1 or 2 places higher up in the league table. Your thoughts? It's hard to say for certain that helps, but I've very much been of the impression sort of growing up, and I think particularly during the days of Arsene Wenger, where there was this kind of influx of foreign players to one club in particular. And I do think we were victimized off the back of that. I do think we were penalized for that at times. I do think we were on the wrong side of decisions because of a subconscious bias. Maybe it wasn't subconscious, maybe it was a conscious bias, but whatever. But there was some bias, I think, towards an Arsenal side that had very few English players that, decided and opted to go abroad and cherry pick talent from other leagues, bring them in cut price deals and nurture them into really top talents. There was a feeling that approach was stifling the development of young English players here in the UK. And I do think that we were on the back end of some bad decisions as a result of that bias. I also think if you look in some of the recent seasons, you look at Tottenham, I think they got away with a lot when they had a kind of really English core. I think Liverpool, with the fact that they had Henderson, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Joe Gomez, etc., James Milner, have got away with things in the past as a result of that as well. So it's an interesting point. The problem is with this, Aditya, is that you can never really prove this theory. It is a theory that you can gather evidence to support either way. So I wouldn't be counting on that, but it's something that shouldn't disappear from our minds. I agree there. Majid says, hi, Harry. He's referring to the rumours suggesting that Arsenal would need to pay £60 million plus for James Maddison. He says, hi, Harry, I'm not sure about the £60 million plus rumours for Maddison because of his injury problems. I think it's better to put more money on top of the 60 million and go for Grealish. I completely agree. I mentioned this briefly on the podcast I did yesterday with Casey Bourne. We were talking briefly about England's win over the Czech Republic. And I went to the ground and admittedly, Jack Grealish is not a player I've seen live that many times in comparison to how many times I've seen some of the others. And what I found with Jack Grealish was this incredible ability, as I said previously, to be able to suck people in, to drag people out of position, to carry the ball into areas that essentially pull people away, and then having that knack and ability and understanding and know-how and being able to release the ball just at the right moment so that he does take players out of the game but doesn't lose it as well. There's a fine line between delaying, especially when you're playing in the Premier League. I think it's a league where if you delay, you're going to get clattered. That's just the way it is. But I think Grealish does that particularly well. I'm a massive fan of his, and I would put money, if you're going to go and spend 60 odd million on Maddison, which we don't know that Arsenal are. We heard reports that he was a target, but there's been nothing since then to suggest that this is happening or that this is a goer. But you're right. If you're going to spend 60 million pounds, lump on another 15, 20 and test Aston Villa's resolve with regards to Jack Grealish. The fact that they're in for Emile Smith-Rowe doesn't scream that they want to sell Jack Grealish, but it maybe indicates that they're planning for life after Jack Grealish. I don't know. Who knows? But I agree with you, Majid. I'm a massive Grealish fan, and I'd go for that. Pramod says, Odegaard's decision forces us to push for Maddison move. It's hard to find a proven central attacking midfielder for cheap. As I say, I wouldn't take Martin Odegaard's comments as gospel, as a couple of you pointed out in the chat. He's got to say what he said. Yes, in an ideal world, he'd be, we'd be sort of more in the know about how Real Madrid are viewing this, how Real Madrid are seeing this, but it is what it is. Somebody like James Maddison, I like him, but again, as I've kind of expressed in the past, I'm not sure that he's worth the kind of money that Leicester would be asking for. What else have we got? Let's pick out some more comments. Omar says, would I prefer to see Arsenal look at Sabitzer instead of Maddison as a cheaper option? Yeah, there are rumours that Sabitzer could be allowed to leave Leipzig in a cut price deal, and he's certainly a player I like. Had a really impressive season in the Bundesliga last season, and the season before that has shown sort of glimpses at the Euros with Austria as well. Yeah, I'm a fan of Marcel Sabitzer, and I think that's the kind of recruitment Arsenal probably need to be looking at, rather than, sort of overspending and going completely crazy on players because they are, and I quote, Premier League proven. Matt says, Harry, I know we're not talking about Ben White, but do you think there's anything in the idea of bringing him in as a right wing back? Do you think that's why our right back links have gone quiet? That's a really interesting point, Matt. If if Ben White was to come in as a right wing back, I don't really see it. I think for me, Ben White is more likely to come in as the right-sided centre-back, that can also play there if we switch to a back three, that has the ability to step into the midfield when we're in possession. In terms of your point about him playing as a right wing back, I think with Arsenal, what you've seen when Hector Bellerin has played there is you've seen the left back push on and the right back sometimes tuck in and make it sort of a back three, or the right back kind of step inside the pitch and be like this additional midfielder, almost square to the midfield pivot that would have been Xhaka and Partey. Ben White is capable of doing all of those things. I think his versatility is a factor. I think it's why, people sort of value him so highly. It's why Brighton don't want to sell him on the cheap. Maybe I think he'd be coming in though with a view to playing at centre back. And I do think that if Ben White is brought and if Arsenal do break the bank to sign him from Brighton and Hove Albion this summer, that spells the end for William Saliba and his Arsenal career. I really do. And a lot of people will be up in arms about that and disappointed and pissed off about that. And we spoke about it at length yesterday. But I do think that Ben White's signing will be make or break, or Ben White's prospective signing would be make or break. Listen, Arsenal have had a bid rejected for Ben White, but we've had bids rejected for other players and then never gone back with the asking price. So I wouldn't hold my breath on this one just yet. It'll be nice if it happens. I like the player, but as I've said time and time again, you only go and spend big on Ben White if you've got money to also do your work elsewhere, because Arsenal, for me, could do with another centre-back, yes, but I think there are more priority positions. I think the midfield is the key area, and I'd rather Arsenal spent big there and look to sort of continue with the defence as it is with the players that we've got. Pat Moyle says, Harry, if at the end of the season Arsenal put a list of targets to go and get, what sort of timescale would you expect at least one of them would be signed by? This is really difficult to say, Pat, because a lot of the time, and what we don't realise as a buying club, is that the selling clubs are often looking at how they're going to replace that outgoing player before they've done a deal, signed on the dotted line to allow their player to leave. So it's a bit like buying a house, right? You can be in a chain when you're buying a house. And if their sale, your purchase might fall through if they're unable to purchase their next property. And there's a bit of a knock-on effect, a bit of a domino effect. And that applies in football as well. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to wait for them to complete the deal of their replacement or that, it's going to happen straight away. But they want to know that they have the finance to do that. They probably want to identify targets. So that's one of the factors you have to consider. The other factor is that everybody wants to get the best deal at a time like this. And so it's often a bit of a game of chicken. Who's going to back down first? Who's going to bow to the other one's demands first? And that's another thing you got to factor in. It's difficult to put a timescale on. Look, I think in an ideal world, as I say, Mikel Arteta would have liked, I think, to have made a couple of significant signings by the time his team returned to preseason training. But if you're talking about players that are at the Euros and are not going to return to preseason training on July 8th or whenever it is that the rest of the group are returning anyway, then what difference does it make if they're signed now or if they're signed in a couple of weeks' time? Ultimately, they'll still need their holiday. They'll still have their break and they'll still not be a part of your training sessions when you first return. So I just want to stress to everybody, please don't get sort of too bogged down in the fact that we haven't signed anybody up until this point. It is June 24th. The Premier League season for us starts on August 13th. We've got the whole of July and basically just shy of half of August before we kick off. So I'm not stressing at this point, but I get why people are worried about it. I get why people are thinking about it. I get why it's a bit of an issue for some people. What else have we got here? Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat box. Don't forget, if you haven't done so already, please hit the like button. It really, really does help the channel grow. And of course, subscribe if you haven't done so already. We're about 270 subscribers away. I think that's right by my calculations, from hitting the 14,000 mark. I'd love to do that in the next month or so. So please, if you haven't done so already, hit that. And just a couple of other bits before we go back to the questions, just to let you know on. So members of the channel, if you are a member of the channel, there is a members only exclusive bit of content dropping a little bit later on today, where I spoke to one of the most well-respected Italian football journalists, Carlo Garganese, about Manuel Locatelli, a player who Arsenal are rumoured to be interested in this summer. We also talked about Italy's chances at Euro 2020 and got that bit of expert insight from Carlo. As I say, that video is available to gold members and above from this afternoon. So if you're not a member and you want to get access to our exclusive members only content, you can do so by clicking on the link in the description and signing up via our YouTube channel. You'll get access to those videos, exclusive access. They won't be going out anywhere else. So if you fancy supporting the channel but also unlocking that content for yourself, then feel free to do so. I'd love to have you. So that's coming a little bit later on today. Let's quickly check in where we are in terms of the likes at the moment and set ourselves a little target. I've been told this is the way to get likes. It's to set targets. We're on 31 at the moment. Let's try and get to 50 sooner rather than later. I'm sure that's very much achievable. In other news, a lot of you have been asking me about watch-alongs. Are we going to do any watch-alongs during the European Championships? And the reason I hadn't done so was because I wanted to just kind of sit back and enjoy the tournament. And I talked earlier about never having a break, but I wanted to have something of a break because the football season's been really busy and you know, quite demanding. And then obviously there wasn't much time between the football season and the Euros kicking off, and the transfer stuff's going to be in full flow come the end of the Euros as well. But I have decided by popular demand that we are going to do some watch-alongs during the knockout stages of the Euros. Now, I don't have a full schedule in place just yet because obviously I have to work it around work and I have to fit it in around the work I'm sort of already contracted to do. However, we're going to kick it off this Saturday with a game between Denmark and Wales. That one's a 5 o'clock kickoff. So I'll be with you from 4:45 right here on the YouTube channel. So make sure you're subscribed if you haven't done so already. Turn your notifications on. I'll be bringing you full commentary, in-play analysis, and be responding to your questions and thoughts in the chat box throughout. So Denmark versus Wales is going to be our first watch along of Euro 2020. I know a lot of you have asked for it, so there we go. We're going to deliver it. Let's go back to the chat. Pramod says, what do you think of our transfer strategy in general, Harry? Almost every link we see points towards the future. I think you kind of have to look a bit to the future now, because what's happened at Arsenal is for years we haven't looked to the future, and we made signings for big money that, you know, were going to serve a purpose for 2 or 3 seasons, and beyond that not be very useful. We've seen a lot of those players, you know, your Xhakas, your Mustafis, you know, their values have decreased dramatically, and that's been a big problem for Arsenal when trying to shift them and then looking at, well, you know, it's all good saying you want to move him on, but can you afford to move him on if you then need to put X amount on top to replace him with someone better? And that's been the issue for Arsenal for a while now. If Arsenal are going to spend big this summer, and there are rumours that Arsenal have more money available to them than any of us envisaged when last season finished. I'm still not convinced that they're true, but we'll give it a go. We will give it a go. And yeah, I mean, let's see, you know, if that is the case, then great. And Arsenal can give it a go in the transfer market, then do it. But you've got to be making signings with the view to the future. And that's not just about the age of the player. It's about the profile of the player. It's about how you could potentially raise money from that player in the event that you need to, from selling them on again. There are so many things you have to consider when spending big money. So many things that Arsenal failed to consider when they made some of the signings that I've already mentioned to you. What else have we got? Let's pick out some more of your comments. Big hello to Alejandro, who joins us from Brooklyn, New York. Hope you're well, mate. Big hello to Mr. Bungle as well. What else have we got? Zeb says all the Onana rumours, talking about the links with the Ajax goalkeeper. But do you think Leno actually needs replacing? In my opinion, he's a 4th or 5th priority. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I would like to replace him in an ideal world because I'm not Bernd Leno's biggest fan for a number of reasons, which I won't get into again now. But is he the priority? No, he's not. He really isn't. What else have we got? Majid says, who would you like to see come in to replace Steve Bold? Would be nice to see Henry or someone like Pires to take the role. See, I think the role that Steve Bold was working in, the under-23s role, is massively important at a football club. Essentially, you are coaching those players in their final step before breaking through to the first team. Now, it doesn't always work like that. You don't always see players with that clear progression line from the under-18s to the under-23s to the first team. It doesn't always pan out like that. But I think you have to have a really good coach in place. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a big name. It doesn't necessarily need to be a star. It doesn't necessarily need to be someone to appease the fans. What it needs to be is it needs to be a very good coach, not even manager, coach. Because at the under-23 level, you know, you get to a certain point, you're going to have your best players cherry picked by the first team manager. He's going to call them up. But it's really important that players sort of, enhance their education, their footballing education further when in the under-23s. I think it's so important. And for that reason, I wouldn't go for a Thierry Henry or somebody like that, because I'm not convinced of his credentials as a coach. I think you need someone who's a little bit more complete as a coach, rather than kind of being that person with the X factor. I think you've got to look at them as a coach, and you've got to judge them on merit rather than by who they are. Who they are is even less important at under 23 level, in my opinion. It's about giving those players, as I say, the right education. Right. I think we're going to leave it there. Thank you to every single one of you for tuning in. Really, really appreciate your support. As always, don't forget to hit the like button if you haven't done so already. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new. And don't forget, if you want to become a member, you can do so by clicking on the link in the description. And members only get access to our bit of content that's dropping a little bit later on, where myself and Carlo Garganese, Italian football journalist, sat down and discussed all things Manuel Locatelli and Italy ahead of their UEFA Euro 2020 quarterfinal clash with Austria. Last 16 clash. I'm all over the place with Austria coming this Saturday. So do check it out. I'm going to leave it there, and I'll catch you all very, very soon. Until next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
You're listening to the Chronicles of Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.